Hey, welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star. Cards After Dark, Hard Knocks, Episode 1, post-game show. Johnny Venerable, Bo Brock. Bo, you know it's going to be a compelling evening when the first comment I read says, "This ain't the Big 12," and in relation to head coach Kliff Kingsbury and the perception following Episode 1. We got a ton of takeaways, but most importantly, Steve Trout from NFL Films, Hard Knocks director, will be joining us at some point during the show. A lot to break down, my friend.
Absolutely. A lot to kind of digest. I knew, like, when we're watching that and they're talking about Kliff Kingsbury and you hear the narrator extraordinaire, Liev Schreiber, who's got the voice of God, kind of a puff piece for Kliff Kingsbury, who right now with the Cardinals at 3-6 and the offensive woes is not somebody that's looked kindly upon by Arizona Cardinal fans, but they gave a glimpse a little bit of who Kliff is. I thought it was interesting that he has his staff vet anything that gets to him, so he doesn't have to take any, ricochet shots or any unnecessary hits or any hits at all, as far as from the media or fans or anybody trying to reach out to Kliff Kingsbury.
I'm going to make a bold statement. I thought Kliff, and we got a ton more episodes to break down.
Yeah,
I thought Kliff was going to come out of this looking, way better than public perception. I don't feel so good about that after tonight, just based on the fact that it just kind of looked like a dude hanging out, And again, we didn't get into the nitty gritty of film sessions, and we may not. And you knew we were going to get an inside look, but the crib walkthrough, which is great for like casual fans. But when we've watched this team, when we've lived this team, penalties, mistakes after mistakes, incompetence offensively, it's like I don't love the optics from Kliff Kingsbury. I'll be honest. After this first show,
I don't know. Maybe he needs his astrological sign. Maybe something needs to change there for him to have a little bit more success as far as this team goes and how the offense plays. But the lion picture with the crown, we found out that he's probably a Batman fan. He's got a few like Batman, not watercolors. What are those paintings up in his house? He's a murder mystery guy. I can tell you who killed the offense. I figured it out. I cracked the case as far as who's murdered the Arizona Cardinals offense, and it's unfortunately the number one suspect is Kliff Kingsbury. But no, I mean, it was an interesting episode. I mean, let's start from the beginning before we talk to Steve Trout. I mean, it starts with Kyler Murray dejected, walking off the field in Minnesota, and then it kind of comes to a head where he spikes his helmet and shows, how pissed off he is with how, because that game was just, as Wolf put it on the broadcast, as they showed, there was missed opportunities, as we outlined after that loss, missed opportunity after missed opportunity. And then they kind of take you through kind of for the national audience who these guys are, who Kliff Kingsbury is, who Kyler Murray is. And then Budda Baker is an absolute star. I see everybody in the chat saying that I need a Budda jersey now. Absolutely. Budda Baker was a fan favorite, even more so now as you kind of get a glimpse of him and how he's kind of taken on his little sister who's going to go to ASU, it looks like. But I don't think that Kliff did himself any favors. Probably a national audience doesn't truly get the true context of why the fans are upset with him after seeing that kind of how it played out. I don't know. What were your thoughts, Johnny?
Well, I had my bingo card out, and number one was Michael Bidwell flies a plane easily. You can check that box every time. Watt doing something wholesome. You can check that box every time. Kliff Kingsbury in his home in Paradise Valley talking about his cool shit. I definitely thought that was a lock for the episode. We kind of previewed this on our show at 4 p.m. We didn't expect like an in-depth look at Kyler Murray's life yet. I think that's coming. Good. Tease that, HBO. That is what I'm most interested in. I'll tell you what, though, like I was impressed with a couple of different aspects. Number one, Budda Baker, it's easily the star of the show in a positive light for this fan base. Cares, but you know that like he's their best player or one of their best players. What I didn't love was very much like the mindset when D-Hop came back, the conversation between Van Jefferson Sr., right? And then Kliff Kingsbury, John Jefferson, his son's Van. Basically like Hopkins is back. We're saved. Look, guys, D-Hop's back. And I just didn't get the sense that like, anything other than thank goodness he's back because shit's hitting the fan. And I'm like, it's cool for us to say that and the fans to say that, but I did not. Sean, to me, was just kind of vibing this episode, just like, I don't know. That conversation between Sean and Kliff was a little strange.
I'll say this. At least D-Hop wasn't buying into it, right?
Right.
I mean, at least D-Hop, he was like, what's going on here, dude? I mean, you're sending, I'm feeling uncomfortable with how you're complimenting
That was
me
a weird
now.
conversation entirely. But now, I mean, like, the good players are good. We knew who was good before the show. And then the usual suspects, God, Keim finishing the episode with his hand over his face, sitting next to Michael Bidwell, like, Jesus, what's going to happen?
I'm concerned about how they took you through them watching the game and just seeing how they interact with each other. AJ, Keim, his face looks like his job is on the line, and absolutely should, right? But the way that they were dapping each other and the way that they're buddy, I think I was concerned, like, is Bidwell really? Because if you don't know, I mean, this is a relationship that's over 2 decades old. And as far as everything that Michael Bidwell knows about team building, it's through Steve Keim. And I'm concerned that he's not going to be able to, to pull the trigger on letting him go.
Well, I'm not knocking Michael Bidwell. I think he's a good owner. And I think he's good for the city and the team. But I don't think he's married, right? And typically, like, you've got issues at work, you go to your spouse. Like, certainly, that's common practice. Your husband, your wife, whomever. He doesn't have that, right? And so he's got his buddy at work who just happens to run personnel for the team. So I'm 100% with you. I would feel uneasy about that. And I also, your boy Liv Shriver at the beginning, it's like expectations are high. They went to the playoffs last year. Well, okay. They were 10-2 and they collapsed and got embarrassed in January. Like, let's contextualize it and say what's actually happening. And they're underachieving this year. And the offense is the problem. And Kliff Kingsbury coaches the offense. And Steve Keim would have to hire his 4th NFL head coach. Like, there are layers that the casual fan, we get it. The folks in the chat get it. Casual fan doesn't get that. It's like, oh, look at this young hot coach for Arizona. They were in the playoffs last year. I'm sure they'll bounce back. The GM, look at all this talent, right? I don't know. We watch, I feel like Cardinal fans, us in the Valley, will watch that episode very differently than everybody else in the country that's not diehard football.
Yeah, for sure. There were a couple of things too. I agree, Aaron, as far as Kyler looking at the film, watching film and seeing who he missed. And we kind of figure it out. What started the interaction on the sideline between him and DeAndre Hopkins? It was DeAndre Hopkins going up to him saying, hey, what did you see out there? Pretty much, I'm open, paraphrasing, get me the football. We saw that, and we also saw, why Kyler Murray ended up on the injury list today, the injury report. And does it make you feel a little bit more comfortable to know that he played with it for the most of the game? And then we find out that Kliff Kingsbury was wrong as far as when Budda got injured, because he got injured on the last offensive drive for the Seahawks when Kenneth Walker got into the end zone.
It makes me feel bad. Like, you know how I feel. I deliberately think that they're kind of leaning into this hamstring potentially because of the situation against the Rams and your interior line. Like, I had that conspiracy theory on Monday, then that came out. But clearly, you heard it. Kyler tweaked it at the end of the first half against Seattle. My problem is, though, is like, you can't play not to run right now with the state of this offensive line. You can't sit back there and expect to throw darts against this Rams secondary. I think he has to be able to move, and I'm sure that's what they're deciding. Like, because he's instinctive. The play is going to break down. The offensive line is going to get engulfed at times by 99 Aaron Donald. He's got to be able to manipulate the defense outside of the pocket, just like the Hopkins touchdown to begin the game last week. He rolled outside the pocket because the pressure was so immense. I don't know if it's worth having Kyler Murray be a lame duck with a hamstring, even if you're like, well, he's not going to run. Running's part of his game, at least right now with this offense that's so limited.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. In what he had to do just on that opening drive, their first touchdown in the first quarter of the season, is he had to convert, and they showed it. And DeAndre Hopkins acknowledged it, like, hey, good run on that, where he converted a long third down, and it moved the chains on that drive that eventually ended up in the DeAndre Hopkins touchdown. And then it was just really rough sledding from there. All the penalties, and then you hear before the game, like the practice leading up, no more self-inflicted wounds, no more issues. During the game they're talking about it, and then what do? 12 penalties, and what is it? 8 pre-snap penalties, and it was just actions have to speak louder than words with this team so far, because you can't take anything they say at face value anymore, because they've struggled so mightily, especially on the offensive side of the football, with penalties, with protection. It really was kind of interesting to kind of have the curtain pulled back a little bit on all of that.
Yeah, great comments. Thank you so much, guys, for the engagement. We're happy we're here. We're going to do these every single Wednesday night following Hard Knocks. AJ, I like that Kyler wants to win and grow, but Keim did not get him no O-line. And Kliff, man, he needs to go. He ain't no leader at all. Bro makes the dumbest speeches, which mean nothing. And again, that's an extreme take. I love it, AJ, and I'm inclined to believe you with a lot of what I saw from Kliff Kingsbury tonight. We didn't dive too much on Keim. I feel like that's coming. Dylan Peterson, thank you so much. $4.99 super chat. The thing that stood out to me, Bo, the most was when Kliff was trying to talk to his players on the sideline. None of them were looking at him bad look. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it was interesting to kind of see him. It was almost too composed. It was too composed for what I felt like the moment was, because they know the week leading up, they knew this was a must win, that they needed to win 2 of the next 3 games to put themselves in a situation. And now you're looking at taking on Danny McVay and the Rams on Sunday, and then a Monday night game in Mexico City against the 49ers, to kind of see that there wasn't that much sense of urgency. So you like your leader to be calm, cool, and collected, but I don't know if that's really what you needed in the moment. But let's kind of table that for now. We've got a great guest coming on from NFL Films. Director Steve Trout joins us here on PHNX Cardinals. And Steve, thank you so much for taking some time. We just watched the debut episode of Hard Knocks. How much input did you have into this episode, premiering for Cards fans and everybody around the nation watching on HBO?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I as the senior director, I kind of head up the team there in Tempe, gathering all the day stuff. So I had a big hand in look, it's a big group of us who are working on this. So it's just me talking to you. There's about 80 of us combined in Tempe and back at the office at Films who have a hand in it.
Hey, Steve, thanks again. Johnny Venerable, appreciate you joining us. The biggest question I think Cardinal fans have is, the season's not going great. The team site does great work, but this is coming from HBO. This is a third-party objective company that's giving everybody an outside look at this team. Do the Cardinals have any say, and you're allowed to say, with what goes on the screen and not? Does Michael Bidwill come to you and say, hey, guys, we can't do this, or when you sign up for Hard Knocks, it's fair game?
No, look, it's an NFL Films production that's aired by HBO, and how NFL Films has been able to do this for 20 years is because we have a trust with the teams. And so, no, once you sign on, and why the Cardinals are so, such a good franchise, they are fully transparent, guys. So there's nothing that they steer into the episode or steer out of. What we do is allow them to see some stuff, make sure there's no plays on the whiteboard in the background, or audibles or play calls. That's the only thing we do. We're not here to tilt the competitive edge in any manner. So we want to make sure we're not doing that. But no, they trust us, and they know that we're going to tell the story in the best way and the most genuine way that anybody can.
Steve, you've been involved in the All or Nothing series with the Cardinals a couple of years ago, Hard Knocks several seasons, last year's in-season Hard Knocks with the Indianapolis Colts. Is the first episode, especially with the in-season, the toughest to cut up? I mean, I'm sure you're dealing with so much content. Is it by far the hardest one to put together and put it underneath the 60-minute cap?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if you think back to All or Nothing, guys, that aired in April. That aired 4 or 5 months after the year. So this airs real time. And so we're trying to catch viewers up to where we are in week 9, and then also get you into week 9. So yeah, I mean, we had a really good problem with this, is we had so much stuff that we're saving some for week 2. And that's a very good problem to have, at least in our world.
Steve, how do you pick your spots with a team like the Cardinals? Obviously, you got your heavy hitters like Kyler, like D-Hop, but you guys go through a list of players you think the casual NFL fan would want to get to know. You talk about storylines, the in-depth research that you do coming into this project. I mean, talk to us a little bit about why you highlight the folks that you do.
Yeah, it's very clear. We knew about the star power here, but Steve Sable had a great saying, which I say all the time. It's like building an airplane in flight. So you can have a flight plan, and stealing up words from Michael's scene, but in this case, you just kind of go where the plane takes you. And so it became clear early on what a leader and what a pulse Budda had and was of this entire team. So I think the casual viewer knows D-Hop and JJ and Kyler and Kliff. They don't know Budda. So I think this first episode really naturally and genuinely showed you how ingrained he is in the pulse of the entire franchise.
Obviously, you're playing to a national audience, but we've got diehard Cardinals fans, especially in the chat here. And when you're playing to a bigger audience like that and trying to familiarize them with this Cardinals team that we follow every day, what maybe were you not able to put into this premiere episode and it's going to pass us up and it's not going to be able in the future episodes? What maybe did you cut that you thought maybe Cardinals fans would love, but maybe wouldn't play to a national audience?
Well, you know what's funny, because to do a show like this, we're almost shooting 200 times what makes air. So in a way, it's about 0.5 to 1%. Maybe it's 100. It's in the middle there, but it's under 1% of what we shoot makes air, and you have to get a good hour or a good 51 minutes of whatever it was tonight. So there's a lot that doesn't make it, and whether it's it's got to be that top 0.5%. And, we'll use maybe years down the road, do something else with some of this stuff. And to your point, it's a good point. There's probably a lot out there that Cardinals fans would like, but we're here to tell the best story. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And make the best little hour-long films each week.
Steve, I'll pose my last question to you. What everybody wants to see is, when are we going to get a look inside Kyler Murray? He's a very private person. It has to happen, right? He's got kind of this stigma of a gamer, which I know Cardinal fans don't love. The ownership maybe doesn't love that either. Like, are we going to dive into that dynamic and get a peek behind Kyler Murray's personal life at all?
Yeah, look, I'm serious. Like, I got to hand to the Cardinals. They've been so transparent. Every single person from the top down is like, whatever, we told them early on, we're here to tell your story. This might be the only chance and the best chance you have of your whole career to tell your real and genuine story. And everyone's bought into that. So yes, you're going to see the genuine look at a lot of these guys, not just Budda, not just Kyler, but to answer your question, yes, but you're going to get a lot deeper layers at a lot of the guys.
Who's stood out to you as far as this team? Who shows up on film the most, kind of being an under the radar star and is going to pop up later in the season?
Well, I mean, I don't know about later in the season, but we weren't expecting Budda to be this, to be that human pulse of the team. We ramp up for the first 8 weeks of the year. We're there for a couple of days of the week, and then week 9 we're there full time. But it became so clear every locker room after the wins and losses of the first 8 weeks who this guy was, and so that really, really stuck out to us. And we love the fact we got his sister involved, because you see this guy crying in the locker room, and you see what he does. Then you see him as a big brother, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take the helmet off these guys and not make them just football robots, but to make them big brothers in this case. So I love the fact he did that. We've got some more coming down the road, but I can't spoil it too much.
Yeah,
Steve, great first episode. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hard Knocks director, NFL Films. Bravo. Excellent job to you and your team, as always.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
And all those Emmys, and you got the light blaring off of them.
He doesn't have Uncle Pop. He's got an Emmy.
No, he's got Emmys. He doesn't have the lion picture in the background, though. That's a little disappointing, but
no one should have that. No one should have that photo.
But it was great to talk to Steve Trout. I've been talking to HBO. It sounds like we're going to get some great guests the rest of the way out here as Hard Knocks continues with the Arizona Cardinals. Got to tell you about our friends over at Four Peaks. Not only are we doing kind of a recap for Hard Knocks and watching that show, but we're also watching the World Cup in less than 10 days now. We're teaming up with Four Peaks. We're going to host all U.S. and Mexico World Cup matches at their 8th Street Pub. You can enjoy beer specials, giveaways, guest appearances, more. Check the link in the show notes. You can register for free, and you can lock in where you're sitting, where you're watching the World Cup in the next couple days. Also got to tell you about OGs. We are absolutely pumped to re-partner with OGs. They've been in the fold since this past spring, and our partnership's going to continue and grow. They've got a new deal with PHNX. Terms of the agreement, they're not released at the time, and the sources close to the two sides say that we're incredibly excited and looking forward to creating more great content between the brands. As always, you can find them at your local dispensary. Look up more of their products online, OGs ogsbrands.com and on Instagram at ogsbrands. Got to be 21 years or older and enjoy responsibly.
CDH 410, friend of the show in the chat, always makes me laugh. In reference to Steve when he was on, please show that fraud Kime. And then Jordan P. Facts. Sorry I didn't get to that question, CDH. But oh man, listen, we're in a unique position where we watch the show. We don't hate watch it, but I think if the Cardinals were winning, we could sit back and just be like, yeah, this is the infrastructure, man. This is how they're getting it done every Sunday. And we feel great about it. And instead, we've been watching shitty football on Sunday. And so it's just like, yeah, I can get why no one respects Kliff. And yeah, these plays are terrible. And look at these coaches. What are they doing? And the players aren't good enough. It's a fascinating case study, Bo, because again, the expectation was they thought they were going to be a contender this year. And listen, they could go on a run. We'll see. We're hopeful. But where things are trending, not great. And instead, they're 3-6. And, it's the ugly side of doing this in the season. And this is only really the second time this has been done. It was with the Colts last year, who made a second half run before, fumbling that finale in Jacksonville. It's fair to wonder, will the Cardinals even be, how much longer are they going to be able to take themselves seriously with this?
Well, I mean, it's tough to just bet on this team, not just as far as looking at the spreads, but just to say, hey, they're going to get it done, because the first, at 3-6, 9 games of the season, they haven't performed. They've immensely underperformed, underachieved. So to say, hey, they're going to turn around, nothing has really shown you that outside of really the New Orleans game, where they played pretty well starting in the second quarter, and then they scored their first quarter touchdown this past week. So betting on the Cards at this point, and saying, hey, I feel like change is coming and they're going to play better football going forward. I just think you're just doing that with a half glass full mentality, and that you're just trying to be optimistic where nothing has really shown you that. I agree. Cardinals update. I'd written that down too as part of the notes, that Isaiah Simmons, who I've noticed since OTAs, has been working out with the safeties and the DBs, and his position group. Yeah, shocking to see him with the DBs and the safeties as far as who he watches film with. And I mean, he might be a star linebacker, but let's be honest, he plays slot corner. He plays in the defensive secondary. It might say he's a linebacker, but he's easily a DB.
He's been great, but I wonder if that affects him during the game. Think? I think that's been affecting him since they drafted him, and they didn't put him at one position.
Well, he couldn't even get on the field in the last offensive drive for Seattle because they were going to be run heavy. What about that, where you see Vance Joseph saying, we told you about to look out for the boot, and there's no going 50+ yards.
That concerns me, because that tells me this late in the season and in Vance and Kliff's tenure, the players, even if they're calling the right plays and the right schematics, are tuning them out in certain instances. I can sympathize with Vance in that scenario, but you've had your hands on this team for 4 years. This is your group. You've mentored and cultivated a lot of these talents defensively. Why aren't they listening to you? That's what I know, Vance. I think he's a really smart defensive coordinator, but it's more than just calling the defense. The preparation for this team, I think, is the biggest thing. Where we didn't get a ton of practice footage, and they were fucking around in the rain with some music. That was fine. But to me, if I'm a Cardinal fan watching it, I'm a little bit underwhelmed. But I'm gonna tell you what I'm not underwhelmed by. It's our friends at Underdog Fantasy. You can search in the App Store, click on the links in the show notes, sign up with promo code PHNX. Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. If you're into betting on Colt McCoy and John Wolford potentially this Sunday, looking for the hires or lowers, you can do that on Underdog. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code PHNX. Get in on the action today. Game Time app. Listen, Suns are playing tonight. Those seats were hot. But I'm going to tell you right now, Cardinals tickets in a couple of weeks, I think, are going to go for a song on the Game Time app. Cardinals taking on the Chargers at home. We got Mexico City, then back at State Farm Stadium. If you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to spend a premium right now. I'm not sure if the team's going to do well. Number one, let's support them. Also, let's save up to 60% on tickets when you buy last minute. It's great for you procrastinators out there. It's the best way to support us. Just hammer the link below. And speaking of hammer, like this video, Bo Brock.
Yeah, I see Alex in the chat where you saw Isaiah Simmons, by the way. Great that he's buddies like really good friends. He says probably his best friend on the team is DeAndre Hopkins. So a young player on the Arizona Cardinals that they invested a first-round pick with, who's got 3 big game-changing plays this season for this team. He's friends with DeAndre Hopkins, probably your best player on this team. And they were just casually eating dinner at a place that has a 2-month wait to get a table there. What's it called? Bacanora? I've never heard of this place, but of course I wouldn't. I would. That's
Maricopa?
I don't think it's in Maricopa, Johnny. I don't think you can make any reses there. It looked like it was downtown Phoenix by the scene setter that they did. But yeah, I agree with Aaron 84 too. Pay Byron Murphy. He's balling out the CB1 spot. Didn't see a whole lot from Byron Murphy on that episode. Hopefully it's somebody that maybe they'll profile. But I did find it very interesting that Steve Trout of NFL Films told you, Johnny, that a Kyler Murray profile is coming.
I need it. I need it in my life. I need it before Thanksgiving, Christmas. I want Christmas to come early, and I want insight into him, and I want him to be candid. We got a little bit of Kyler one-on-one with the camera, whatever. We've seen that, countless other interviews, team sides. That felt to me a little scripted. Like, say what you want about Kliff. Kliff was just bumming around in his house, and people are going to take away that what he is. He's got some gaudy decor, right? He's just living the bachelor life, but that's Kliff, for better or worse. Like, Kliff does not hide who he is. I want to know more about Kyler Murray off the field. I want to know what he thinks of like the public perception of himself. I want them to address that, because this might be the only time until like after his playing career that we're going to get that insight from Kyler Murray. I want him to talk about the video game mantra and why he feels maybe that's overblown, and the contract situation and all of that. I don't know. I'm waiting for the Kyler episode. But if you're HBO and you want to keep us dangling and the team's not winning, you may have to put that on the back burner, and you may have to tease it.
Yeah, you're going to have to find – I don't think they're having to search for storylines, and it's good to hear that it's full transparency and that it's, there's nothing that's going to be thrown to the cutting room floor because the team says, you can't show that because that would put us in a negative light. So that kind of changed things that I speculated on because – of what Kliff said during a press conference today, that the media relations guy was going to make sure he looks good or not look poor on HBO's screen. But I mean, it's really going to be fascinating to see how the morale of this team and how they approach the next couple of weeks, because it was such a devastating loss, and you saw it play out where they were to start that game, going into that game, start that game, play with the lead, and then relinquish it almost immediately, and then have a tough, like they've been doing all season long, chasing a lead, trying to get back in, and it just wasn't going right mainly because the offense was underperforming and not being able to get out of its own way. I mean, the 3rd and 1 snap over Kyler's head, the 12 penalties, it was just brutal to see in replay in more of a dramatic fashion. No matter how much Budda, in the game tried to put the team on his shoulders and outside the game tried to put the team on his shoulders.
Yeah, and they talked about it like, Cardinals, Kyler Murray, like 7 passing touchdowns in the last 6 games. And then they go into that game, they score in the opening possession, and they don't do anything the rest of the game until, the late in the 4th quarter. And again, I thought they glossed over the offensive struggles, but you're not going to be able to hide that if they play the Rams this weekend and they can't score, and they play the Niners top-rated defense in Mexico City and they can't move the football, right? And Los Angeles Chargers have real defenders. So to me, Bo, it's one of those things where I want to see the struggle and be present in the huddle and know exactly what's going on, because I know it has to run deeper than what we just see on Sundays, what you see from the press box, what we all see at home. That this team, personnel, misplay calls, skews, whatever. But at the end of the day, I keep going back to the fact that I'm not sure how buttoned up Kliff is. I don't know at the end of the day if his players are responding to him. And maybe there's that turning point. Maybe they beat the Rams Sunday with or without Kyler, with or without Stafford, and it gets things going, because we don't root for losses here. We want this team to win as many games as they can, and they showed you how much they care. $1.99 super chat from Jason. This team, year 4 under Guru, is undisciplined, 100%. No arguing that.
Yeah, it was on display, and it's unfortunate. I will say I'll disagree with 91 Claycomb. Just when you watch the training camp Hard Knocks with the Detroit Lions, I was relieved that I didn't see like a pregame halftime speech from every single position coach. It just felt like, Deuce Staley, Mark Brunell, everybody involved with that Lions staff was trying to win the season and just will their way to a above 500 record with a speech. And it just wasn't happening. I did like what I saw from guys like Sean Jefferson addressing the huddle issues and Matt Burke addressing the physicality issues with the D line. And as far as the position coaches, it seemed like outside of maybe the pass rush group, I liked what I was hearing from those coaches. Now, that wasn't the head coach, but I think that the Cardinals have a pretty decent staff outside of that. And these guys, as far as the players and the leaders in that locker room, you hear J.J. Watt at the end of it. You like take the deepest look possible at yourself and look deeper, because we're not figuring it out. We haven't figured it out yet. We're 3-6. We are what our record is.
Yep. And when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. And believe me, we've got some premium deals going on at GoPHNX.com right now. Become a member, just under $60 for the entire year, Bo. Cop a free t-shirt from our PHNX merchandise locker. We've got these lids that are fantastic. Hottest hats in the valley. You can read the work of our many talented peers, including our beat reporter here, Howard Balzer, who I'm sure is going to have a banger of an article following tonight. Let's go PHNX.com. Another $99 super chat from Jason, really going in on Kliff. Kliff the clown looks lost, unprepared, and no care. I just think he's just kind of, carefree. That's Kliff. I did have to chuckle, though, at the beginning of the show when they're like, he mentored Patrick Mahomes. And I guarantee you most people who watched that said, let's maybe take a beat on that. Maybe once upon a time we all thought that. And now did Patrick Mahomes kind of mentor Kliff Kingsbury a little bit, maybe?
I mean, we didn't really get that many big offers, and Kliff at least saw the talent and got him to first round level. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm not going all in on that. He mentored and made Patrick Mahomes who he is, but it was nice to sit back and crack a tall boy. It wasn't a beer during the episode. It was Liquid Death. It's not beer. It's actually mountain spring water from the Alps, and it's called Liquid Death. Why is it called that? It's because it'll brutally murder your thirst. Infinitely recyclable tall boy cans are helping bring death to plastic bottles. And they're going to donate 10% of the profits for every can sold to help kill plastic pollution. Free shipping on all water and merch at liquiddeath.com/PHNX. That's liquiddeath.com/PHNX. You can find Liquid Death in your local Target, Fry, Sprouts. They got the sparkling and they got the spring water. It's all great. Episode 1 of Hard Knocks, Johnny, final thoughts. I mean, I thought that Budda Baker was clearly the star, and it makes me even more concerned about this team having to play Sunday against the Rams without him. You've got Jalen Thompson, sure, his duo there in the back of that defensive secondary, but man, is he going to be missed. And with their linebacker coach Bill Davis pleading with his linebackers to just match his energy. I mean, who's going to be able to do that come Sunday, albeit against a horrible Rams offense?
I love this comment because I agree with it 100%. And it's something we talked about coming into this season. The Icon 20634 basically saying, who are the alphas on this team? I don't think they have enough. Frankly, vocal leaders, on the field leaders. We've talked about Kyler Murray and where he needs to grow as a leader, but it's like a Budda, a D-Hop, a Watt, and, maybe a Humphreys, and then you're kind of grasping at straws a little bit. Jason Krell, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Keim needs to go. Horrible draft picks. He's trash. Listen, Dylan Klein 247. A lot of Kliff hate, not enough Keim hate. I think you can see Dylan in the chat. There's plenty of Keim hate to go around, my man.
Well, and I was going to say, if you're just joining us, I said it earlier. I mean, I was concerned to see the relationship between Keim and Bidwell in the box watching the game. I mean, they were just buddy the whole time. They were dabbing each other up, and it doesn't look like Keim is anybody. He watches the team like he owns the team, doesn't he? I mean, you get the sense that he doesn't. Great point. He doesn't feel uncomfortable about anything. He's pissed by what he's seeing and seeing this team underperform, but I was concerned just kind of seeing how kind of comfortable he was in his seat there up in the owner's box.
I just did this at the end when he's just doing this with his face and just, kind of, You know what? It's a brave move for Steve to sit right next to the owner when the team is so shitty at home. Like that takes some stones, whether or not you think
I don't know if it's is it ignorance? Is it, I mean, is it because he's not going to be told what the hell is this? Hey, what the hell is this, Steve? Why do we have no depth on the offensive line?
All those players are elite.
An offensive line.
No. They're all going to Pro Bowls. They're all.
He looks like the Homelander watching that movie. It's the GIF of Homelander watching the movie.
Yeah. Hey, listen, what a banger of a first episode. HBO Hard Knocks, PHNX Cardinals After Dark. Again, we're going to be doing this after every single episode of Hard Knocks with the Arizona Cardinals. We want to thank Steve Trout from NFL Films for joining us. We're going to try to have a special guest every single week, but you are also special to us. We appreciate the engagement. Some of you are here at 4 o'clock now. We're running it back at 9 just for you guys. For Bo Brock, I'm Johnny Venerable. Like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. We're back on Friday. See you, everybody.